Cosmic Outlaw, the legend of Roan Hale. In a galaxy ruled by unbreakable codes and cold machines, one man discovered the most dangerous algorithm of all, Defiance. Part 5. The Game of Smiles and Shadows. 3 weeks had passed since the night Roan vanished into the green heart of Sherwood, and the forest had begun to feel like an old friend again. Its ancient branches arched overhead in protective silence, leaves whispering constant secrets in the wind, the rich resin scent wrapping around him like a cloak. Yet every dawn brought the same mechanical voice drifting through the canopy from distant towers. Roan Hale, outlaw, wanted dead or alive, substantial reward. Then came the news that stopped every breath in the hidden camp. A runner stumbled into the clearing just after twilight, boots caked in mud, chest heaving from miles of hard travel, eyes wide with a horror that needed no words. Lord Aldric, Mira's father, had been taken in the dead of night. The old noble who had sheltered families from the worst of the taxes, who had spoken quietly but firmly in counsel against the Syndicate's endless grasping, was gone. Tried in a closed chamber before Kane himself. Executed at first light on the spire's central platform, the blade falling swift and final beneath the twin suns that rose indifferent. The runner's words settled over the firelit circle like a sudden frost. Jonah's massive hands tightened around his quarterstaff until the wood creaked. Will stared into the flames without blinking. March bowed his head, broad shoulders sagging. Tucken murmured a prayer that sounded more like a vow than comfort. Roan felt the ground shift beneath him. Mira. He had known her since they were children, racing through these same forests. Her laughter bright as birdsong in spring glades, her aim with a bow matching his own shot for shot, her green eyes flashing fire whenever injustice raised its head. Over the years something deeper had woven itself between them. Glances held a heartbeat too long at harvest gatherings, hands brushing when passing quivers of arrows, quiet conversations under starlit canopies that left unspoken words hanging sweet and heavy in the air. He had never dared name it fully, not until this moment, when the thought of her alone in that cold tower clawed at his chest with fingers of ice. The second blow landed days later. Kane announced inheritance levies. From his dais, in the great hall feast so vast, on Aldric's estate that no honest accounting could ever satisfy them, the ancient family lands bordering Sherwood, rich forests passed down since the first human ships touched verdant soil, would be seized and auctioned to the highest xenobidder unless paid within one moon cycle. Mira was summoned to Kane's private chambers high in the spire. The ascent seemed endless. Stone steps rose cold and smooth beneath her slippers, guards' boots echoing behind her in perfect rhythm, the air growing heavier and more oppressive with every level until it pressed against her ribs like an invisible hand. The chamber doors swung open on silent hinges. Inside, thick tapestries muffled every sound. Incense burned in golden braziers with a cloying sweetness meant to cover the sour scent of sweat and stale wine. Wide viewports showed the forest far below as a distant green sea she might never walk again. Kane waited in a vast chair carved from rare off-world hardwoods, rings glinting on every pudgy finger as he gestured for her to sit. He poured wine into crystal goblets with deliberate slowness, the liquid dark and thick in the low light. "A terrible loss, my dear," he said, voice smooth as oil sliding over broken glass. He leaned forward slightly, jowls shifting, small eyes fixed on her with a hunger he tried to disguise as concern. "Your father was misguided, but I am not a cruel man. Marry me, Lady Mira, and these unfortunate debts disappear. The lands remain yours as you would live in comfort, protected, wanting for nothing." The words hung in the perfumed air like a noose draped in silk. Mira sat straight in the offered chair, hands folded in her lap to hide the way her fingers curled tight enough to leave marks in her palms. She kept her face composed, the small polite curve of lips practiced in mirrors that morning, eyes lowered just enough to seem thoughtful. Inside, revulsion rose hot and bitter in her throat, fury burning behind her ribs like swallowed fire. Submit to this man. Let his sweaty hands claim her body and her birthright both. She gave him nothing, overt no refusal, no acceptance, only a measured incline of her head and words soft as falling leaves. "Your generosity honors me, cher, says a decision requires careful thought. My father's passing weighs heavily still." He pressed, voice dropping lower, almost intimate. "Time grows short. The oxen looms. But say the word, and it all vanishes like mist in morning sun." She held his gaze a moment longer than comfortable, then let her eyes drift to the viewport of the green expanse below. "I will consider it deeply." Roan left, footsteps steady on cold stone, spine straight until the doors closed behind her. Only then, in the empty corridor, did her breath come, shaking hands trembling against the wall. But submission was never an option. In the privacy of her chambers at night, with only loyal maid Ellyn to hear, Mira whispered the truth. "I would lose everything, land's freedom, self, before I let him touch me." The resistance began in shadows and silence. Ellyn became the vital thread. Small, quick, trusted since girlhood, she moved through spire corridors with baskets of laundry or trays of food, heart pounding beneath calm face. Notes written in Mira's elegant hand on thin strips of bot, folded tiny and hidden in loaves of bread delivered to sympathetic kitchen staff at Forest Edge. Messages carried back the same way words from Roan that Ellyn pressed into Mira's hand with whispered urgency. Every delivery carried death's shadow. Scouts crawled on bellies through underbrush as drone light swept inches away, red beams cutting the dark like searching knives. One runner dove into an ice-cold stream when patrol boots crunched too close, breath held until lungs screamed, water shocking skin numb while voices passed overhead. Another hid motionless in a hollow log, mud seeping cold into clothes, insects crawling across face, hearts thundering loud enough he feared to give him away. Each note that reached Roan was a miracle. He would unfold them carefully by firelight, the bark crackling softly in his fingers. Mira's words drawing him into her world, warnings of guard rotations, names of servants who could be trusted, snippets of Kane's plans overheard, and woven through strategy, personal threads that twisted his heart tighter with every reading. I stood at the viewport today and saw Sherwood in the distance. Thought of you waiting beneath the old oak we climbed as children. Hold that place for me. Kane pressed again this evening. I smiled and spoke of needing time to mourn properly. He grows impatient. Betroths thicken around the estate edge. Take care. Roan read them alone first, bowstring across his chest, biting into muscle with every deep breath. The fire's warmth doing nothing against the cold dread that settled in his gut at thoughts of her trapped in that tower. Kane's words to her marriage or ruin ignited a slow, burning rage that made his hands clench until knuckles whitened. The violation of it, the oily presumption wrapped in generosity. The way Kane dangled her father's memory like batit was a quiet evil, cloaked in legality, the kind that made blood boil hot and helpless. The merry men saw the change in him. Jonah noticed first over morning venison, voice low and gentle for such a giant. You carry her in your eyes now, chief. Heavy load. Will added with a half-smile. And Kane's got his greasy sights on her. Makes a man want to string him up slow. Mush muttered through a mouthful. Pig thinks he can buy what he can't earn. Tuchin raised his flask solemnly. The good book has strong words for men who prey on widows and orphans. Stronger actions for those who stop them. Roan shared the notes, eventually, voice steady but edged. The rage spread quiet through the circle faces hardening, fists tightening, not loud anger, but the deep, burning kind that fuels long fights. Secret meetings became lifelines, arranged through coded phrases and notes, held in places only childhood friends would remember. The first took place in the ruined watchtower on the estate's edge. Moonlight filtered silver through broken stone arches, night air cool and heavy with resin from nearby trees. Mira arrived cloaked in dark wool, Ellyn watching the approaches from shadows. Roan waited inside, every sense straining his tune to slightest leaf rustle, eyes scanning dark beyond the crumbling walls. When she stepped through the archway, his breath caught sharp in his throat. She looked thinner in the moonlight, eyes shadowed with grief and constant strain, but her chin stayed high, spirit bright as ever. He moved to her in 3 silent strides, hands rising gentle to her arms, thumbs brushing fabric as if confirming she was real. Her fingers came up to trace the healing scar on his cheek from the cabin fight, touch featherlight, yet burning. You're safe, he whispered, voice rough with the mildness of worry carried since her last note. For now, she answered, fingers lingering. I feared every broadcast meant they had taken you. The space between them vanished. He pulled her close, arms wrapping firm around her slight frame, her body fitting against his like a piece long missing. She buried her face in his shoulder, breath warm through his tunic, hands clutching the fabric at his back as if anchoring herself to life itself. The scent of her hair, faint traces of spire soap now mingled with cool night air and distant resin filled his world completely. They stood that way long moments, heartbeats sinking slow, the ruined towers silent around them save for wind whispering through cracks. When they drew apart, hands lingered, fingers tracing arms, eyes searching faces in moonlight, lips brushed soft, tentative, tasting of shared fear and long-held longing, then surer, deeper, until breath came quick and warm between them. A distant drone hum, forced separation, hands releasing, slow eyes promising return. Back at camp, the teasing flowed warm and relentless around the fire. Jonah rumbled with a grin. Roan's got the look of a man who found water in desert, smirked, lost his words somewhere in a tower, much chuckled. When's the wedding, chief? We'll roast extra stag. Tucken raised his flask. To love that defies towers and tyrants both. Roan bore it with gruff smiles, but the fear gnawed deeper with every message received. Kane pressing harder, offers growing bolder, time slipping away like sand through fingers. Mira played her dangerous game in the spire, smiling at Kane's courting gifts, deflecting advances with graceful words that bought days, all while feeding vital intelligence to the green through Ellyn's brave runs. Every note, every meeting, carried the weight of what was at stake. Love across enemy lines was no gentle dream. It was notes carried through death's shadow, meetings stolen under moon and mist, longing that ached sweet and sharp in every heartbeat, and it burned brighter for the danger closing in from all sides.